The fluorescent lights of the Manhattan Presbyterian ER hummed like a low-frequency panic attack. 2 a.m. I stared at my MacBook Pro, the blue light reflecting off my scrubs. My coffee, a double-shot espresso from Starbucks, was stone cold. A sharp static burst from the radio. Incoming. 2-vehicle collision. FDR Drive. 2 victims. Critical. ETA 3 minutes. The adrenaline hit. It's a clean, clinical rush. I snapped on my nitrile gloves. I didn't know then that the woman I was about to save was the woman destroying my life. The sliding doors hissed open. Cold night air fought the smell of antiseptic. 2 gurneys tore through the hallway, the wheels screaming on the polished linoleum. Vitals dropping. A paramedic yelled, pumping a bag valve mask. I stepped toward the first gurney. My breath hitched. Time didn't slow down, it shattered. Under the oxygen mask, beneath the streaks of blood and shattered glass, was Julian. My husband. His tailored suit, the one I'd bought him from Brooks Brothers for our anniversary, was shredded, soaked in crimson. His Rolex Submariner was smashed, the glass frozen at the moment of impact. Julian? The name died in my throat. I'm a professional. I don't scream. I work. Pulse is thready. We need to intubate, I commanded, my voice betraying nothing even as my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Then, the second gurney pulled up alongside him. The paramedic was holding a designer silk scarf to her neck to staunch the bleeding. I recognized that scarf. Hermes. A limited edition. I had seen it on the vanity of our guest room this morning. It was Sloane. My sister-in-law. My brother's wife. She was wearing a black lace slip dress, hardly what you wear for a casual midnight drive. Julian's hand, limp and bloodied, was still reaching toward the side of her gurney. Between them, on the floor of the ambulance, lay a crumpled receipt from the Ritz-Carlton. The realization was a scalpel twist to the gut. They weren't just in the same accident. They were in the same car. At 2 a.m., heading away from the hotel. Dr. Vance, the head nurse, Sarah, whispered, her eyes wide with horror as she looked from the patients to me. Do you need someone else to take this? I looked at Julian. I looked at Sloane. The smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the metallic scent of her blood. My hands trembled for exactly 1 second. Then I gripped the laryngoscope. No, I said, my voice echoing like ice cracking. I'm the only one who can fix this. I leaned over my husband, the man who had kissed me goodbye at dinner, claiming a late-night merger meeting, and began to fight for the life of the man who had already murdered my heart. At my midnight shift, 2 patients were admitted, my husband and my sister-in-law. The OR was a tomb, silent save for the rhythmic beep, beep of the monitors. I looked down at Sloane. Her face was a canvas of bruises, but the Cartier love bracelet on her wrist caught the surgical lights. A gift from my brother? Or a trophy from my husband? Scalpel, I barked. The steel was cold. My hand was a machine. I sliced through the skin, bypassing the woman who betrayed me to reach the internal hemorrhage, killing her. My team moved in a choreographed dance of trauma surgery. Blood pressure is bottoming out. 70/40, the anesthesiologist yelled. I didn't blink. I reached into her chest cavity. My fingers felt the heat of her life force. I clamped the artery. The bleeding stopped. A temporary fix for a permanent ruin. Close her up. Move her to ICU, I ordered. I'm going to Bay 2. Julian was there. My Julian. The man who shared my king-size Tufton needle bed. The man who promised me forever over a bottle of Dom Perignon last New Year's. He was awake. Barely. His eyes drifted to mine, pupils blown, hazy with shock and morphine. He tried to speak. His lips were cracked, stained with red. Clara, he wheezed. I leaned down, my face inches from his. I could smell the Ritz-Carlton complimentary soap on his skin. It turned my stomach. Don't speak, Julian. You have a collapsed lung and a shattered pelvis, I whispered, my voice a razor. Is she? He coughed, a spray of crimson hitting my white coat. He wasn't asking about me. He wasn't asking if I was okay or how I found out. He was asking about her. His hand moved feebly, searching for the empty space beside him where Sloane's gurney had been. The monitor spiked. Tachycardia. She's alive, I said. I watched his heart rate stabilize at the news, a physical manifestation of his infidelity. I saved her, just like I'm gonna save you. I grabbed the chest tube. No local anesthetic. I didn't have time, or perhaps I didn't want to find it. I drove the tube between his ribs. He gasped, a guttural sound of agony that echoed off the stainless steel cabinets. Eyes on me, Julian, I commanded. I pulled my iPhone 15 Pro from my pocket. I swiped to our shared cloud. A notification had popped up an hour ago, a home security alert from our vacation house in the Hamptons. I held the screen before his fading eyes. The grainy footage showed them. 3 days ago, entering the house, laughing. Julian's hand on the small of her back. His monitor began to wail, a long, continuous tone. Asystole. Code blue? Sarah screamed, reaching for the paddles. Get back, I growled, shoving the crash cart aside. I climbed onto the table, straddling my husband's chest. I began compressions, cracking ribs, hard, fast, thump, thump, thump. I wasn't just pumping his heart, I was punishing it. The paddles kicked. Julian's body arched, a fish on a hook. Clear. The monitor jumped. A rhythm. Sinus tack. He was back. I dropped off the table, my lungs burning, my white coat ruined. Transfer him to ICU, room 402, I said, next to her. I walked to the scrub sink. I scrubbed. Hard. The iodine stained my cuticles like dried blood. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were glass. I reached for my iPad Pro in the locker. I needed to see it again. Not the betrayal. The money. Julian's firm, Vance Capital, was a house of cards. I swiped through the digital statements. Wire transfers to an offshore account in the Caymans. Large sums. All pulled from our joint account, the one funded by my inheritance, and 15 years of double shifts. He wasn't just sleeping with her. He was robbing me. I walked into the ICU. The air was chilled to 60 degrees. Sloane was awake. Her eyes were slits. She saw me. She saw the name tag, Dr. Clara Vance. She tried to hide her wrist, the Cartier one, under the thin hospital sheet. Clara, she croaked. Her voice sounded like broken glass. Don't, I said. I stood at the foot of her bed. I didn't check her vitals. I checked the IV drip. I know about the Hamptons, Sloane. I know about the Caymans. Her face went gray. Not from blood loss, from fear. It's not. Julian said you wouldn't care. He said you only loved the hospital. He lied about a lot of things, I replied. I pulled a chair over. It scraped the floor. A harsh metallic shriek. Like the business trip to Aspen. I checked the Amex Platinum records. You weren't in Aspen. You were at the Post Ranch Inn in Big Sur. On my points. In the bed next to her, Julian groaned. He was drifting in and out. The heavy hitters, the fentanyl and midazolam, were wearing off. Julian? Sloane called out. Her hand reached across the gap between the beds. I stepped between them. A wall of blue scrubs. He can't help you now. And my brother? He's on a flight from London. I sent him the video from the Hamptons while I was closing your incision. Sloane's heart monitor began to gallop. 110, 120, 130. You're a doctor, she hissed, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. You have to help us. I did. I leaned in, whispering so close I could see the terror in her pupils. I saved your lives. Now, I'm gonna watch you lose everything else. My phone vibrated. A text from Detective Thorne. The dash cam from Julian's Mercedes is in my hands. Clara, you need to see this. It wasn't just an accident. I looked at Julian. He was staring at me now, fully conscious. He saw the phone. He saw my face. He knew. I turned my back and walked out. I had a phone call to make to my lawyer. I met Thorne in the hospital's basement parking garage. He was leaning against a black Ford Explorer, the city's humidity clinging to the concrete. He handed me a tablet. The Mercedes S-Class has a sophisticated drive recorder, Thorne said. I pulled the file before the insurance adjusters could touch it. I pressed play. The footage was crystal clear, 4K resolution. The interior of the car was lit by the glowing dashboard. Julian was driving. Sloane was in the passenger seat. They were arguing. Viciously. You promised, Julian. Sloane's voice was a jagged edge. You said the divorce papers were signed. You said the money from Clara's trust was already in the Cayman account. It's taking time, Julian roared, his hands white-knuckling the leather steering wheel. The Mont Blanc pen hasn't even dried on the transfer documents. If she suspects anything, we're dead. She's a workaholic. She suspects nothing, Sloane spat. She reached over, grabbing his arm. But I'm pregnant, Julian. I'm not waiting in the shadows anymore. My heart stopped. Pregnant, my brother's wife, my husband's child. On the screen, Julian snapped. He turned his head to yell back. He didn't see the semi-truck merging. The horn blared, a deafening metallic scream. The impact was violent. The camera spun. Glass shattered like diamonds in the dark. Silence. Then Julian's voice weak, gasping. The bag, Sloane, hide the bag. I handed the tablet back to Thorne. My hands were blocks of ice. What bag? Thorne opened his trunk. Inside sat a Toomey briefcase, scorched and dusty. He popped the latches. Bundles of cash. Wrapped in Federal Reserve bands, at least $500,000, along with 3 burner phones and a set of forged passports. They weren't just having an affair, they were preparing to vanish. With my life savings. This stays with me, Thorne said. But the police report will mention the unsecured luggage. The DA is going to love the reckless driving and the fraud. I walked back upstairs. The elevator was a stainless steel cage. I looked at my reflection. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like an executioner. I entered Julian's room. He was hooked up to a Viair ventilator. The baby, I whispered, leaning over his bed. His eyes flew open. He couldn't speak through the tube, but the terror was there. Clear as day. I saw the video, Julian. I know about the pregnancy. I know about the passports. I pulled a chair to his bedside and opened my Kindle. I started reading the 48 Laws of Power. You're going to get better, Julian, I said, flipping a digital page. Because you need to be healthy enough to stand trial. The automatic doors hissed. My brother Leo stormed in. He looked like a ghost in a Tom Ford suit. He had just flown red-eye from London. His Rimowa suitcase rattled against the hospital floor, a sound of impending doom. He didn't go to Sloane's room. He came to me. Is it true? His voice was a choked rasp. I didn't speak. I handed him my iPhone, the Hamptons footage, the video of his wife and my husband, entwined on our mother's antique sofa. Leo watched. His jaw tightened until I heard the bone click. He didn't cry. He looked like he wanted to burn the building down. She's pregnant, Leo, I said. My voice was flat. Julian's. He punched the wall. The sound echoed through the ICU. A nurse started toward us. I waved her off. I gave her everything, Leo whispered. He looked at the Tiffany wedding band on his finger. He ripped it off. It hit the floor with a hollow clink and rolled under a medication cart. I bought her that Range Rover for her birthday. I put her name on the deed to the townhouse in Chelsea. Check your accounts, Leo, I said. I sipped a lukewarm Starbucks latte. If Sloane was helping Julian, your townhouse might not be yours anymore. He pulled out his phone. Panic replaced the rage. I watched his face fall as he scrolled through his banking app. Empty, he breathed. The line of credit, maximized. She's bled me dry, Clara. They were leaving tonight, I said. Thorne found the passports and the cash. Leo looked through the glass window into Sloane's room. She was hooked to a monitor, pale and fragile. She looked like a victim. She was a predator. I saved her life today, Leo. Twice. Why? He asked, turning to me. Why save the woman who destroyed us? Because death is too easy, I replied. I adjusted my stethoscope. I want her to feel the weight of what's coming. I want her to see the handcuffs. A code blue alarm went off down the hall. Not our patients, but the chaos was a perfect backdrop. Go home, Leo. Wash the flight off you. Call your lawyer. I've already called mine. I walked back into Sloane's room. She saw Leo through the glass before he turned away. She screamed his name. It was a pathetic, thin sound. I stood over her. I checked her surgical drain. He's not coming back, Sloane. No one is. I pulled a small Amazon box from my bag. My new Kindle. I sat down and opened Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The best revenge, I read aloud, is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Sloane sobbed. The monitor spiked. I didn't call a nurse, I just turned the page. Sunlight bled through the blinds of the ICU. 7 a.m. My shift was over, but I wasn't leaving. I sat in the corner, my MacBook Air humming on my lap. I wasn't looking at medical charts. I was looking at the debris of a marriage. Julian was off the ventilator. His breathing was ragged, assisted by a plastic mask. He watched me. His eyes were darting, searching for an exit that didn't exist. The police are in the hallway, Julian, I said. I didn't look up from the screen. Detective Thorne is cataloging the Toomey bag. $500,000 in cash, federal crime, structuring, money laundering. Julian tried to cough. Clara, listen. I'm listening to the numbers, I interrupted. I turned the laptop screen toward him. I tracked the IP addresses. You were accessing the Cayman accounts from our home Wi-Fi, using the iPad I gave you for Christmas. Amateur. I stood up. My heels clicked on the linoleum like a ticking clock. I pulled a folder from my bag. It wasn't hospital paperwork. It was a forensic audit. You didn't just take my inheritance. You leveraged my medical practice. You forged my signature on a bridge loan for Vance Capital. Julian's monitor began to chirp. Anxiety. I was. I was going to pay it back. One big play. The big play was running away with my brother's wife, I said. I leaned over him, my shadow swallowing his bed. But here's the problem. The Mercedes is registered in my name. The dashcam footage? That's my property. And the conversation you had about the money from Clara's trust? That's a confession. The door opened. 2 uniformed NYPD officers entered, followed by Thorne. Julian Vance, Thorne said, his voice echoing in the sterile room. You're under arrest for grand larceny, embezzlement, and reckless endangerment. You'll be moved to the prison ward at Bellevue as soon as you're stable. Julian looked at the handcuffs hanging from the officer's belt. Then he looked at me. You saved me just to put me in a cage? I saved you because I'm a doctor, I said, snapping my laptop shut. What happens next is because you're a criminal. I walked out. In the next room, I saw Sloane. She was being served with divorce papers by a process server Leo had hired. She was clutching a Starbucks cup a nurse had brought her, her hand shaking so hard the coffee spilled onto her white sheets. I felt a strange lightness. I walked toward the exit, passing a Dior boutique in the hospital lobby. I stopped. I looked at a red dress in the window. My life was a wreck. But I was the one walking out of the wreckage. The legal war room smelled of mahogany and expensive ink. I sat at a glass table in Midtown, my Mont Blanc pen poised over a stack of affidavits. Across from me, my attorney, Evelyn, flipped through a MacBook Pro. The Cayman accounts are frozen, Evelyn said. But there's a twist, Clara. I looked up. The baby? The hospital lab ran a routine blood panel on Sloane before her surgery, she said, sliding a document across the table. Julian isn't the father, neither is Leo. I felt a cold laugh bubble in my throat. The irony was a physical weight. Sloane had played everyone. She was playing Julian to get to my money. She was playing Leo to keep her lifestyle. And she was playing a third man for something else. Who? I asked. A tennis instructor from the Hamptons Club, Evelyn replied. A nobody. She was going to use Julian's stolen cash to run away with him. My phone buzzed. A call from the hospital. Sloane was hemorrhaging. I didn't rush. I walked. I took the subway, the 6 train, watching the blurred lights of New York. I arrived at the ICU. The high-net-worth wing was quiet. I entered Sloane's room. She looked skeletal. The Cartier bracelet had been taken by the police as evidence of assets purchased with stolen funds. Her wrist looked naked. Pathetic. The baby is gone, Clara, she whispered. Her eyes were sunken. I lost it. I know, I said. I pulled up a chair. I didn't offer comfort. I offered the truth. I also know it wasn't Julian's or my brother's. The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the hiss of the oxygen machine. You were going to let Julian go to prison for you, I said. You were going to let him steal from me for a man who doesn't even know your middle name. I needed a life, she shrieked, her voice cracking. A real life, not this fake, polite bullshit you and Leo live. You had a life, I replied, standing up. Now you have a mountain of medical debt and a felony indictment for conspiracy. I walked to the window. Below, on 5th Avenue, a yellow cab took a corner too fast. Life moved on. I pulled a book from my bag, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I left it on her bedside table. Read it, I said. You're going to have plenty of time in the state penitentiary to figure out where you went wrong. The prison ward at Bellevue was a world away from our Upper East Side penthouse. Julian sat in a wheelchair, his legs useless, his face a map of scars and regret. No more Brooks Brothers suits, just a coarse orange jumpsuit. She's gone, Julian, I said. I stood behind the reinforced glass. I know, he rasped. She won't take my calls. Tell her I'll fix the money. I'll take the fall for the fraud if she just waits for me. I leaned into the intercom. My voice was a frozen lake. The baby wasn't yours, it was the tennis pro from East Hampton. The color drained from his face. He looked like a man watching his own execution. He clutched his chest, the ribs I had broken during CPR still mending. No, he whimpered. I did everything for her. I gutted our accounts. I betrayed you for my son. There is no son, Julian. Just a $2 million hole in my practice's finances and a long list of federal charges. I pulled out my iPhone 15 Pro. I swiped through photos of our life. The gala at the Met, the skiing trip in Vail, the quiet mornings with Nespresso in bed. Then I hit Select All. Delete. Everything we owned is being liquidated, I said. The Mercedes, the Rolex collection, the Hamptons house, even your Peloton. It's all going to restitution. You're leaving this world with exactly what you brought into it. Nothing. The guard tapped his baton on the glass. Time was up. Clara, wait, you can't leave me here. I have nothing. You have 20 years to think about it, I replied. I walked out of the ward. The air outside was crisp, smelling of rain and New York grit. I felt a strange vibration in my pocket. A notification from my bank. The frozen assets from the Caymans had been partially recovered. I didn't feel happy. I felt clean. I stopped at a Barnes & Noble on the corner. I needed a new book. Something about beginnings, not endings. I picked up a copy of Atomic Habits. Small changes. One day at a time. I hailed a Tesla Uber. As the silent engine whirred, I looked at the Manhattan skyline. I was a doctor. I was a survivor, and for the first time in 10 years, I was free. 6 months later, Manhattan didn't sleep, and neither did I. But the rhythm was different. I wasn't running from a crumbling marriage. I was building an empire. I stood in the center of my new clinic in Tribeca. The walls were glass and polished concrete. A MacBook Pro sat on the reception desk. Minimalist, efficient, mine. Dr. Vance, the shipment from Peloton Commercial just arrived for the rehab wing, my assistant said. Have them install it in the South Bay, I replied. I checked my Cartier tank watch. 10 a.m. I wasn't just a surgeon anymore. I was the founder of the Vance Recovery Center. I used the recovered Cayman funds and the sale of the Hamptons house to pivot. No more ER marathons. I was fixing lives on my own terms. My phone buzzed. A news alert from the New York Post. Vance Capital CEO sentenced to 22 years. Co-conspirator Sloane Vance enters plea deal, 8 years in Bedford Hills. I felt a ghost of a shiver. Then, nothing. Just the cool air of the AC. The glass door opened. A man walked in, tall, graying at the temples, wearing a crisp theory suit and carrying a Starbucks bag with 2 cups. Detective Thorne. No, just Marcus now. He'd retired from the force a month ago. Thought you might need a caffeine fix, he said, handing me an oat milk latte. You're late, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. The Tesla autopilot got confused by the construction on Broadway, he joked. He looked around the clinic. You did it, Clara. You actually did it. I had good help, I said. We walked toward my private office. On the shelf sat a worn copy of Women Who Run with the Wolves, a gift from my therapist. A reminder of the wild, unbroken spirit I'd rediscovered. We sat by the floor-to-ceiling window. The Manhattan skyline was a jagged crown of silver. Leo called, Marcus said. He's in San Francisco, starting over at a tech firm. He sounds better. Good, I whispered. I looked at my hands. They were steady, no tremors. Clara, Marcus leaned in. There's a gala at the Plaza Hotel tonight, for the First Responders Fund. I have 2 tickets. I looked at the black Dior shopping bag in the corner, the red dress. It was waiting for a night like this. Pick me up at 8, I said. I wasn't the doctor who saved her husband's mistress anymore. I was the woman who saved herself. The grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel was a sea of gold leaf and crystal chandeliers. I smoothed the silk of my Dior dress. It was the color of a New York sunset. On my neck, a simple Tiffany diamond solitaire caught the light. No more heavy heirlooms, just clarity. Marcus stood beside me. His Hugo Boss tuxedo fit him perfectly. He didn't look like a cop anymore. He looked like a partner. Dr. Vance, a voice called out. It was the chief of surgery from my old hospital. The city is talking about your new center. You're making waves, Clara. I'm just focused on the healing, Dr. Miller, I replied, sipping a glass of Veuve Clicquot. I felt a vibration in my Chanel clutch. A final email from my lawyer. The liquidation was complete. The Hamptons property had sold to a tech CEO. The funds were back in my account. Julian's name had been legally scrubbed from every deed, every title, every memory. I walked toward the balcony. The air over Central Park was cool and crisp. Thinking about them? Marcus asked, joining me at the railing. No, I said. And I meant it. I'm thinking about tomorrow. I have a 9 a.m. consultation with a young girl who survived a hit and run. She needs a miracle. I'm going to give it to her. Marcus smiled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small Amazon box. I saw you highlighting a chapter in your copy of Meditations. I found this vintage edition, 1920s. Thought it belonged in your new office. I touched the leather binding. It was warm. Real. Unlike the life I had left behind. In the distance, the sirens of an ambulance wailed through the streets of Fifth Avenue. 6 months ago, that sound triggered a panic. Now it was just the heartbeat of a city that never stops moving. Julian was behind bars in upstate New York. Sloane was in a cell in Bedford Hills. Their world was 4 gray walls. Mine was the horizon. "Dance with me?" Marcus asked. The band inside began to play a slow, soulful jazz arrangement. I took his hand. My skin felt alive. My heart beat with a rhythm that was mine alone. I was no longer the doctor in the midnight shift, trapped in a nightmare of betrayal. I was the architect of my own light. The scalpel had cut deep, but the wound was closed. The scar was just a map of where I had been. I stepped onto the dance floor. I closed my eyes. I breathed. I was Clara Vance. I was whole. I was free. 1 year later, the morning sun flooded my apartment in Hudson Yards, casting long golden rectangles across the oak floors. I sat at my Hermes leather desk, the city humming softly 30 floors below. On my MacBook Air, a final notification popped up. The scholarship fund I'd established in my mother's name was officially fully endowed. I closed the laptop and picked up my Kindle. I had been rereading the 48 Laws of Power, not to manipulate, but to ensure I was never a victim again. But today, I set it aside for something lighter, a handwritten note from a patient. "You didn't just fix my arm, Dr. Vance. You reminded me that broken things can be stronger at the seams." I walked to the kitchen, the scent of fresh Nespresso filling the air. Marcus was there, leaning against the marble island, scrolling through a travel guide for Santorini. He looked up, his eyes warm, and handed me a glass of fresh squeezed juice. "The flight leaves at 6, he reminded me. "No pagers, no emergency surgeries, just the Aegean Sea." I looked at my hands. They were the same hands that had cracked Julian's ribs to save his life, the same hands that had signed the papers to strip him of his freedom. But now, they were simply holding a cup of coffee in a quiet home. The trauma was a closed book. The betrayal was a ghost that no longer haunted the hallways. I realized then that healing isn't the absence of a scar. It's the moment the scar stops aching when the weather changes. I grabbed my Rimowa suitcase and met Marcus by the door. As we stepped into the hallway, I didn't look back at the penthouse. I looked at the man beside me. I looked at the sun hitting the glass towers of Manhattan. Life had been a storm, but I had learned to fly in the wind, and for the first time in my life, the sky was perfectly clear.